The atmosphere at Dallas Love Field Airport was charged with the typical rush. Travelers darting to and from, announcements overlaying the hum of conversations. Amidst this chaos, Barron Trump sat unassumingly in the priority boarding section, his presence barely noticeable as he scrolled through his phone, headphones in. His attire was simple, perhaps too casual for the exclusivity of his seating area, which might have caught the eye of the gate agent. The agent, a middle-aged man with a notably stern demeanor, approached Barron with purposeful strides. His expression was one of suspicion and authority as he stopped before Barron, blocking his view. "Excuse me, young man," he began, his voice carrying over the noise of the terminal. "Are you sure you're in the right boarding group?" His tone was more accusatory than inquisitive. Startled, Barron looked up, meeting the agent's challenging gaze. He nodded, removing one earbud. "Yes, I am." "I have a first-class ticket," he replied, his voice calm yet firm. However, the agent's doubt did not wane. "Can I see your ticket?" he insisted, reaching out a hand expectantly. As Barron retrieved his phone to show his digital boarding pass, the surrounding passengers began to take notice. Whispers spread and curious glances were cast their way, the scene quickly drawing an unexpected crowd. The tension escalated palpably, the air thick with anticipation and confusion. No one expected this turn of events, least of all Barron, who was now at the center of an unwelcome spectacle. Dallas Love Field Airport buzzed with activity, its corridors echoing with the sounds of hurried footsteps, rolling suitcases, and the intermittent drone of overhead announcements calling passengers to their gates. The air was a blend of coffee aromas, fast food, and the distinct scent of travel. Anxious excitement mixed with the fatigue of long journeys. It was here, amidst this eclectic orchestra of sounds and movements, that Barron Trump sought anonymity. Dressed in a simple hoodie, jeans and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, Barron sat quietly in the first-class waiting area, trying to appear just like any other teenager traveling alone. His attempt at blending in was meticulous. He avoided eye contact, kept his gaze fixed on his smartphone, and used his cap to shield his face from the frequent glances of passers-by. Despite his efforts to maintain a low profile, the familiar contours of his face and the understated elegance of his casual attire drew the eyes of those familiar with the Trump family. The scrutiny was subtle at first, furtive glances and double takes from travelers and airport staff alike. However, as the gate agent approached him with a frown of suspicion, it became clear that Barron's attempt to blend in had fallen short. This encounter, though seemingly minor, was poised to escalate into a conflict that would demand intervention from a figure whose influence was as undeniable as it was formidable. The stage was set for a drama that would unfold in the most public of arenas. The Dallas Love Field Airport's usual clamor dimmed into a soft murmur as the confrontation between Barron Trump and the gate agent intensified. At first it seemed like a minor hiccup, a brief check of credentials before Barron could proceed. But as the agent persisted, demanding more than just a glance at a digital boarding pass, the ambiance around them shifted perceptibly. Passengers, initially absorbed in the chaos of their travel routines, began to slow their steps. Their gazes were drawn to the young figure who sat under the scrutiny of the agent's questioning. Whispers bubbled up among them as they speculated about the nature of the problem. Some recognized Barron, pointing subtly and murmuring to companions, while others puzzled over the disruption, curious about the cause of the delay. Barron, for his part, managed a facade of serenity. His hands were steady as he displayed his boarding pass and other identification documents, his face calm despite the undercurrent of frustration that might be simmering beneath. His youth contrasted sharply with the agent's gruff authority, highlighting the disparity in their encounter. The agent, seemingly unsatisfied with the electronic proof, gestured assertively with his hands, his voice growing louder as he explained the need for additional verification. "We have to be sure," he insisted, glancing around as if to justify his diligence to the onlookers, who now formed a loose circle around the scene. As the minutes ticked by, the tension became almost tangible, enveloping the nearby travelers in a cloak of discomfort. They watched, and some with sympathy for Barron's plight, others with mere curiosity, as the agent made a call on his walkie-talkie, requesting further assistance. The agent's body language was rigid, his brows furrowed, signaling that this was no routine procedure. In the midst of this, Barron's composure began to draw murmurs of admiration from some of the bystanders. "He's handling it well," someone noted, voice low, as they watched the teenager who stood, not just as the son of a famous figure, but as a young man enduring a public ordeal with unexpected grace. The area around the gate had now transformed into a small arena of suspense and speculation, where the usual noise of announcements and chattering travelers was drowned out by the focused attention on the unfolding drama. The airport, a place of transience, had suddenly become a stage where a story of dignity and scrutiny was being performed, capturing an audience that had not expected to find themselves at such a show. Despite Barron's efforts to provide evidence of his rightful place in the priority boarding area, the gate agent's skepticism persisted, casting a shadow of doubt that seemed unwarranted by the straightforward evidence. The agent, a veteran in dealing with potential breaches of protocol, appeared unduly influenced by the boy's last name, Trump, which was synonymous with both power and controversy. The agent's manner grew increasingly formal and curt, reflecting his determination to enforce every iota of airport policy, possibly more stringently than usual. "Please wait here," the agent directed Barron, his tone indicating that compliance was not optional. He walked away briskly to consult with a supervisor, leaving Barron standing alone, exposed to the growing scrutiny of the gathered crowd. As the agent explained the situation in hushed but urgent tones to the supervisor, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, onlookers began to form their own theories. Some whispered about the potential for a security concern, while others speculated more pointedly about the treatment possibly being due to the high-profile nature of the young man's family. The supervisor, after a brief conversation that seemed to involve a review of Barron's boarding details on a handheld tablet, approached with an air of authority that suggested she was accustomed to resolving such matters. However, her arrival did not bring the resolution Barron might have hoped for. Instead, she echoed the agent's request for further verification, emphasizing the need for additional checks due to unusual circumstances. The vagueness of her explanation only fueled the spectators' curiosity, turning murmurs into a more audible buzz of conversation. "This is just a standard procedure, but we need to be thorough," the supervisor stated publicly, her voice loud enough for surrounding passengers to hear, perhaps in an attempt to justify the ongoing disruption. Barron, maintaining his composure, nodded and complied, although the strain was beginning to show in the tightness of his jaw and the slight furrow of his brow. As the supervisor made calls and tapped at her device, Barron stood waiting, the center of attention in a theater of travelers. The side comments from onlookers continued to swell, mixing sympathy with indignation. "He's just a kid," someone said, a note of empathy in their voice. "Why put him through this?" questioned another, reflecting a growing discomfort with the situation. The initial conflict at the gate had now escalated into a public spectacle, with each minute that passed amplifying Barron's discomfort and the crowd's involvement. The airport, a nexus of transient paths, had unwittingly become an arena for a drama that highlighted issues of privacy, privilege, and protocol, ensnaring not just Barron, but all who witnessed the unfolding scene. The atmosphere around the boarding gate grew thick with tension as the supervisor took charge of the situation, her decision to delve deeper into the matter, adding layers to an already uncomfortable scenario. With a firm gesture, she directed Barron to a cordoned-off area adjacent to the boarding desk, a space typically reserved for resolving ticket discrepancies quietly. However, the high visibility of this particular passenger and the growing crowd ensured nothing about this was going to be discreet. Barron, visibly uncomfortable with being placed under such a spotlight, complied with a resigned nod and moved to the designated area. His compliance, while graceful, did little to quell the rising curiosity and speculation among the onlookers. The murmurs grew louder, fueled by the presence of a few individuals who, recognizing the potential gravity of the scene unfolding before them, began recording the incident on their smartphones. The glow of their screens punctuated the gathering, casting a modern glow on an age-old spectacle of public scrutiny. As Barron stood isolated, the supervisor conferred earnestly with the gate agent. They periodically glanced at Barron's documents and then at Barron himself, as if trying to reconcile the young man they saw with the information presented. Their expressions were grave, the weight of making a call in such a high-stakes scenario palpable in their furrowed brows and tight lips. Are there any issues with the ticket itself? Is there a reason we're holding up this young man? The supervisor's voice, though intended to be private, carried over to Barron and the crowd. Her question seemed rhetorical, meant more to reaffirm their procedure than to seek new information. The agent, still holding Barron's boarding pass, shook his head slightly, suggesting confusion more than confirmation of any actual issue. Meanwhile, the spectators' whispers coalesced into a clearer narrative among the crowd. "That's Barron Trump, right?" One whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "What could possibly be wrong with his ticket?" Another speculated. The presence of a Trump, particularly in such a fraught situation, turned the event into a narrative ripe for social media, where the lines between public interest and personal invasion blur easily. Adding to the spectacle, airport security began to hover closer to the scene, their presence a silent testament to the tension and the potential for this situation to escalate further. They watched the crowd as much as they watched the interaction at the gate, their eyes sharp and assessing. In this rising action, every whisper and murmur, every discreet and not-so-discreet snapshot taken, wove together a tapestry of public judgment in digital documentation, setting the stage for what was becoming less about a ticket verification and more about a cultural moment captured in real time. As the murmurs and the tension reached their peak, the sudden appearance of Melania Trump changed the dynamics entirely. Striding through the terminal with a purposeful gait that parted the crowd as if by magnetic force, she carried an aura of authority and elegance that was unmistakable. Her sharp eyes quickly assessed the situation, from the uneasy stance of her son surrounded by officials to the cluster of onlookers with their phones poised. Melania's approach was swift and determined, her heels clicking authoritatively against the floor, echoing above the subdued murmur of the crowd. As she neared the cordoned-off area where Barron stood, her expression, a composed mask of maternal protectiveness, tinged with discernible anger, made it clear she was not just a bystander, but a formidable participant about to take control of the narrative. The crowd instinctively stepped back, creating a clear path for her as she reached Barron. Her presence commanded immediate attention from the airport staff involved in the dispute. The supervisor, recognizing Melania, quickly stepped forward, her earlier assertiveness fading into a more cautious demeanor. The shift in her approach was palpable. What had been a procedural adherence transformed into an apprehensive attempt at diplomacy. Melania's first words were direct and laden with a calm intensity that demanded an explanation without voicing a direct question. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, her voice steady but laden with an undercurrent of displeasure that suggested she expected a swift resolution. The air around them seemed to crackle with the shift of energy. Her intervention was not merely a turn in events. It was a decisive moment that promised to redefine the outcome of the entire ordeal. Melania Trump's intervention was immediate and commanding, contrasting sharply with the escalating uncertainty that had gripped the area moments before. As she stood beside Barron, her presence alone seemed to cast a palpable shadow of authority over the proceedings. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, met those of the supervisor and the gate agent, who now appeared noticeably less certain of the protocol they had been enforcing so rigorously. "Please explain why my son has been singled out in this manner." Melania's voice was calm but carried a depth that resonated with the gravity of her query. The challenge was clear, and her tone left no room for evasion. Under her gaze, the supervisor faltered momentarily before attempting to gather her professionalism. "We were just performing a routine check, Mrs. Trump. We meant no disrespect, but we had to ensure that everything was in order." However, as Melania continued to address the airport staff, it became evident that she was not seeking mere assurances or superficial apologies. Her questions were pointed, aimed at uncovering the reasoning behind the excessive scrutiny Barron had faced. Is it customary to question a valid ticket to this extent, or is there another underlying issue that needs to be addressed? She pressed further, her voice both firm and composed. Her intervention shifted the atmosphere from one of bureaucratic procedure to one of introspection and possibly realization. The staff began to understand the potential oversight and misjudgment in their approach, especially given the lack of any concrete reason to doubt Barron's documentation. This was a turning point not only in the immediate situation, but also in their personal understanding of the impact their actions could have when not balanced with fair judgment. Barron, standing quietly by his mother, felt a wave of relief wash over him as he saw the change in the staff's demeanor. The confidence and authority his mother exuded reassured him, softening the harshness of the previous moments. It was clear that Melania's involvement was pivotal, transforming an escalating situation into a moment of critical reflection for everyone involved. Melania Trump's assertive intervention prompted a swift reassessment by the airport staff, who rapidly acknowledged their missteps. The supervisor, her demeanor changed from authoritative to conciliatory, turned towards Barron with an apologetic expression. "We are very sorry for this inconvenience, Mr. Trump," she said, her voice carrying clearly over the muted conversations of the onlookers. This public apology marked a significant shift from the earlier confrontational stance, reflecting the staff's realization of the gravity of their error. The gate agent, too, stepped forward, his earlier sternness replaced with regret. "It appears there was a misunderstanding with the verification process of your ticket," he explained, his tone earnest. "We strive to maintain security and efficiency, but it seems we overstepped in this instance. Please accept our apologies." This acknowledgement was not whispered in secrecy, but made openly, ensuring that all bystanders who had witnessed the escalation could hear the remorse in his words. Around them, the crowd's restless murmuring subsided as the resolution unfolded. Passengers who had paused in their tracks to witness the drama now saw a resolution that seemed to restore a measure of dignity to the young traveler. Some nodded appreciatively at the apology, while others resumed their journey, the excitement of the confrontation giving way to the normalcy of airport hustle. Meanwhile, Barron, who had stood by quietly, feeling increasingly vulnerable under the public's gaze, visibly relaxed as the tension dissolved. Melania placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, giving him a reassuring look that silently conveyed her protective presence was unwavering. This gesture did not go unnoticed by the onlookers, many of whom felt a renewed respect for the poise and grace both mother and son had shown under pressure. The situation, now defused, ended not with further conflict, but with a clear acknowledgement of a mistake and a commitment to better handle such situations in the future. This resolution allowed Barron and Melania to prepare to continue their journey, with the respect of those around them visibly restored. As the apologies concluded and the misunderstanding was clarified, the atmosphere at the gate gradually returned to normal. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse, each individual carrying away a fragment of the lesson that had unfolded before their eyes. For many, the incident was a poignant reminder of the importance of respect and the impact of assumptions in public interactions. Barron, now reassured by his mother's adept handling of the situation, regained his composure fully. His posture, once tense with the strain of public scrutiny, relaxed as he and Melania prepared to board their flight. The experience, while unpleasant, had ultimately reinforced his trust in his mother's ability to protect and advocate for him in any circumstance. Melania, aware of the eyes still on them, maintained her composed demeanor as they walked towards their gate. Her role as a protector was evident, not just in her intervention, but in her continued support as she conversed softly with Barron, ensuring he was untroubled by the day's events. The staff, having learned a valuable lesson in handling situations with high-profile individuals with more tact and fairness, returned to their duties with a new perspective on the power dynamics involved in their roles. As Barron and Melania disappeared down the jetway, the remaining onlookers reflected on the encounter. Discussions about celebrity, privacy, and the quick judgments so often passed in public places continued among them, signaling that the ripple effects of this incident would last far longer than the confrontation itself. The incident at Dallas Love Field Airport serves as a profound reminder of the critical need to avoid hasty judgments and to approach each interaction with fairness and respect. It highlights the powerful role of parental advocacy in defending and supporting children against undue scrutiny and injustice. Furthermore, it underscores the public's influence in shaping such narratives, emphasizing that onlookers and witnesses have a responsibility to foster understanding rather than fuel conflict. This story is a testament to the dignity every individual deserves, advocating for a more thoughtful and compassionate society where respect transcends age and public stature. The video concludes by inviting viewers to share their own experiences with assumptions and their effects. Join the discussion below. How do you think empathy can change our interactions in public spaces? Let's talk about ways to promote respect and understanding in our daily lives.